Great. So is this everyone? Yeah, great. Wonderful. Well, very warm welcome from me. My name is Dharmasara, and I'm going to give a talk. That's why I'm here. So one thing I've learned from Lajos Ratna about giving talks is not to start with an apology. But then when you do start with an apology, it usually turns out to be a good talk as well. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to apologize. No. I'm just going to say this talk turned out to be completely different from what I intended. So I was actually going to talk about something completely different. Then I moved on to something completely different altogether, and now I'm on plan C. So there we go. It's just because one thing led to the other in terms of inspiration. So I'm just following my gut feeling. So this might be a very intuitive talk today. But I'm very excited about it. Because this talk is going to be about something that I'm very passionate about. It's about a topic that sort of inspired me to become a Buddhist in the first place, which is kind of this topic about, what is actually at the very core of Buddhism. Yeah, what is the central teaching of Buddhism? What's the essence of Buddhism? Yeah, what is this all about? Why are we here? What are we doing? So this is kind of my ongoing theme, I think, for my practice, is to keep coming back to that essence and that core. So I'd like to explore that. It might not be very practical today. It might be very philosophical. So I also apologize for that, but you have to indulge me, I'm afraid, because I'm sitting up front and you don't. Anyway, gosh, where to start? So, well, you could call this talk, what do Buddhists believe in? Yeah, so this is about Buddhist belief. Yeah, this is about what does a Buddhist believe in? What is our belief? It's quite interesting. We, as a Buddhist, you get asked that question quite a lot because it's not quite clear what Buddhists actually believe in. Because to be honest, that concept of belief is quite foreign to Buddhism. It's not at the core of what we do, is what we believe in. I've attended many sort of interreligious groups, interreligious kind of circles, and I always have to be the nasty one to say, actually, that doesn't apply to Buddhism. So, because they all come together, because they always say, I've actually been in groups where they said, well, we all believe in God, that's what brings us together. And then I have to say, actually, we don't believe in God, sorry. And then they have to sort of find another compromise, another kind of, well, we all believe in this, and I have to say, oh, it's actually not quite true for Buddhism either. So so we're always the odd ones out, I'm afraid. It can be quite annoying to be with Buddhists in interreligious meetings because we just don't share any of the other beliefs. Not all of them, but we usually then end up with like, well, we want to be all kind to people, don't we? And it's like, okay, yes, that's a good one. That's so it becomes a sort of humanist kind of gathering. But there we go. So it can be quite confusing to actually understand what as a Buddhist you do fundamentally believe in. When I decided I wanted to be a Buddhist, that was when I was around, I think, 18 or 19. I decided I want to be a Buddhist. I sort of made that decision, I think, unconsciously before I knew what I was supposed to be doing, before I knew what Buddhism was about. So I sort of one day decided, okay, I guess I'm a Buddhist. That's what I'm going to do with my life. And then I just thought, well, okay, so what do I believe in now? What can I tell people? And I thought, well, the Christians have it easy because they came up with the whole system of, religion is something that you believe in. So it's a Christian concept that we're stuck with here in the West as Buddhists. But they have it easy. They have a sort of creed. You say, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus Christ, I believe in this. And, if you come from a Christian background, that's then what makes you a Christian is your belief. Yeah, that's not true for other religions. That's mostly true for Christianity, but that's why we're sort of stuck with it. And I thought, okay, they have it easy. They sort of can tell people, well, that's what I stand for, that's what I believe in. As a Buddhist, it's not easy at all. It's not easy at all. I wanted to sort of figure out what I could stand for. I wanted to figure out what I could do as a Buddhist. What do Buddhists do? What do they sort of cling to? How is their world sort of made up of. A belief system is usually something like a worldview, isn't it? Like a belief system is something that where you say, well, this is what I think, this is how I think the world works, this is how I think, life works, etc., etc. So I kind of wanted to figure that out, and this is something that's ongoing for me anyway. This kind of exploration of what is actually at the core of Buddhism, what makes one a Buddhist. And I gave a talk recently about that. What does one make a Buddhist? But today I stumbled upon a short writing from our teacher Sangharakshita. So there's a picture of him here on the shrine, Sangharakshita, and he decided, or well, the way he phrases is he discovered he was a Buddhist at a very young age. Much younger than I was, while reading Buddhist texts, and he thought, oh my God, this is okay, I've always been a Buddhist. And he started writing into a journal, into like a magazine called The Middle Way when he was sort of around 18, 19. And this is one of those short articles. And this short article is called I Believe, ... And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So I chucked down all my other notes about the other 2 talks I have written. And I thought I'm just going to talk about his words. Because it's so, I don't know, I'm just very, it was really mind-blowing for me reading it, because what I think he managed to do was really encapture the essence of, what as a Buddhist you fundamentally believe in. Yeah, as a Buddhist, what we believe in. And I warn you, it's not as easy as God, because that's really sexy, isn't it? You can just say, well, I believe in God. As a Christian, you have it quite sexy. It's like, it's just one word. As a Buddhist, you have to say, well, I believe in this, and there's a bit of Pratityasamutpada, and there's also enlightenment, and but it's all nothing, and it's all everything, and it's all empty, and we don't have a self. So anyway, it's all really confusing. But I think it's almost poetic the way he describes it. So I'm just going to talk about, it's a very short article, it's just 2 pages, so read it up if you want, it's just 2 pages. It's very easy with our attention span these days. And I'm going to shorten it even more. It's only the first 2 paragraphs we're going to talk about today. Isn't that lovely? So I'm just going to read it out, and then we're just going to go through sort of line by line, or as it were. Okay? So it's entitled, I Believe, ... I believe, but what can I say? The more I find out about myself, about the world, and about others, the more I realize that there's less to be said about it than ever. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. Our belief is our experience, and our experience is flux and continually changing. It cannot be grasped any more than the wind or the waves. To attempt to render in words is like trying to square the circle, and not a stable circle at that, but a circle whose center is darting from place to place and whose circumference is continually stretching out towards infinity. At the root of things, there's an unfathomable mystery. Perhaps I believe this. At any rate, I know that any attempt to know or cognize this mystery is to play with concepts, ideas, etc., a game of chess whose conclusion is inevitably and always stalemate. My discriminating mind commits suicide. It has to admit that it is illogical to be too logical. But again, perhaps I believe I shall arise like a phoenix from its ashes when it has destroyed itself. Who knows? This mystery is abiding, and perhaps its very existence is my eternal arising from what I am in the flesh, in the discriminating mind, in all that is limited. Ooh, okay, quite mysterious. So these are the first 2 paragraphs, and what I love about this is that, he starts with that question. He says, I believe, but what can I say? Everything's in that. Everything is in that first line. I believe, but what can I say? It's he's already telling us, well, already that statement, I believe in this, I believe in that, is sort of, it's almost too outrageous to begin with. It's too outrageous to say anything about anything. Yeah, it's too sort of it's too sort of coarse. Yeah, it's not refined enough to sort of say, you know, I fundamentally believe in this or I believe in that, because, you know, one thing that Buddhism teaches is that absolute truth is something that can only be achieved by directly seeing into truth, by directly letting go of any kind of preconceived ideas about any sort of views about ourselves. There's this lovely teaching by the Buddha where he says that, you know, part of the path of Buddhism is to move from what we call wrong views to right views to no views. Yeah. So he says that, you know, the way we live, we are sort of entrenched in wrong views. Yeah, we're entrenched in wrong views, I'm afraid to say. These are views like, you know, I live forever is a sort of fundamental view we all have. We all really believe that we live forever. That's a wrong view. We know it up here, but we don't know it, you know, down here. That's a fundamental wrong view. We behave as though we would be living forever. We behave as though sickness will never strike us. We behave as though we are, you know, we're not going to get older. We're not going to get any sort of ailment. This is one of those. These are the sort of views we're entrenched in. We just sort of black out reality. Yeah, we're sort of filtered by our views, by the way we relate to the world. Yeah, we fundamentally think we are just going to be just like this forever. Yeah, and if there's anything getting in the way, to that we react with hatred. We want to get it killed. We want to get it exterminated. Yeah, even if we think we're a lovely person, if something that we hold dear to ourselves is being removed from us, if we notice that, oh, grey hair is coming slowly, or hairs falling out, we react with very strong. We would be reacting very strongly. Yeah, that's because of our views of, you know, we think we are eternal beings, you know, who are fundamentally good and we're always right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm exposing too much of myself here, but this is definitely how I go through the world. But you see what I mean? It's like we are in this sort of state of, or Buddhism says we are in this state of, well, wrong views. They're just wrong. They're just not correct. Yeah, we might have sort of subjective views or relative views that are true, but on a sort of fundamental level, they are not correct at all. Yeah, they're not part of reality whatsoever. Yeah, so these views are. So the Buddha says, well, try to move away from those. Try to see that those are views that are limiting you. Yeah, those are views which hold you back. Try to see that you hold views which are not in line with what reality really is. Yeah, he even is saying that those views that we hold determine our experience. So in Buddhism, what we think of ourselves and the world actually determines or produces our experience, not the other way around. So there's a very, very famous quote in an old scripture called the Dhammapada, and the first verse is that all things are preceded by mind, led by mind, and created by mind. Yeah, so all things, you know, from our perception, from our experience, come out of our own mental states. So we sometimes think, when we talk about views and experience, we sometimes think that, you know, we have loads of experiences. You know, we see light, we have sense experience, we have, you know, we have thoughts. You know, things sort of happen to us. People come into our lives, and then we also have a few views sort of floating around. Yeah, imagine the mind like a sort of fish tank. Yeah, and we usually think, oh, there's lots of experience there. And then there's a few sort of views floating around in that fish tank. Yeah, this is usually how we think of our mind. Yeah, you know, views like I like this, but I don't like that, or I'm this kind of person. I've got this identity. I don't know. I'm on this sort of political spectrum, or whatever view you can come up with, or even fundamental views like, well, you know, there's nothing after death, or there's heaven after death, or whatever, or life is, you know, I will live forever, I won't die. Those kind of views. We think they are just sort of in there, in this sort of big kind of tank of experience, you know, from like we just sort of perceive this world unfiltered, and then we think we sort of create our worldview around that, yeah, as if we're completely objective usually. Well, it's not like that. This fish tank is filled with views, and there's a few experiences floating around in there. Yeah, that's how. That's a much more accurate description of the mind. Yeah, so our views come from our conditioning, from our upbringing, our culture, our biology, whatever. Yeah, we sort of come into this life with a lot of preconceived ideas, with a lot of conditioned views, with a lot of habits that change and shape our character, our mind, and according to that, we filter our experience. Yeah, we're not sort of unfiltered beings. Yeah, we only perceive what we want to perceive. We react in the way we want to react according to the sort of ground shape of our mind and of our consciousness. Yeah, and according to that, we sort of shape and organize our experiences around that. Do you see what I mean? It's like our mind sort of subconsciously, it's nothing we do actively, takes up all this experience and says, oh yeah, no, let's not look at that. Let's focus on that. Yeah, that's boring. Let's think about that. Like in meditation, for example, you know, you sit down to meditate. You think, amazing. I'm going to meditate now. I'm going to have all these amazing experiences. At first, the mind quite quickly says, actually, let's not look at the body. Let's think about cake. At least that's what I've been doing anyway. But do you see what I mean? That the mind is sort of steering us into certain directions and into sort of patterns that we've sort of inherited, and it's very tricky to get out of. But they shape what we believe. They shape what we like. They shape how we talk, how we behave, how we are with people. They shape what we think about ourselves. You know, that's on the level of psychology, for example, in terms of, you know, what our family was like, what our upbringing was like, what our culture is like, but also just on the mere level of what we do in day-to-day life, what sort of choices we make in life, that shapes our fundamental sort of life, and then that sort of brings about a certain type of experience, a certain type of perception even, yeah? So we're not filtered, we're not unfiltered at all, we're very filtered. We're a very filtered being. This is why we practice mindfulness, yeah? This is why mindfulness in Buddhism is so important, because mindfulness says, well, no, let's look at everything, yeah? Let's look at what's actually there. Let's come back to the senses, let's come back to what is actually there. What can we feel? What do we experience? Let's come back to a mind that isn't sort of separated and all over the place, but let's bring the mind together so that it can actually look at what is actually there. Okay, that was the first sentence. I've actually jumped ahead of myself. So I think the sentence I wanted to pick out is, you know, he says, our belief is our experience, and our experience is flux and continually changing. It cannot be grasped any more than the wind or the waves. So this is basically what I've been trying to talk about, is that, well, our belief is our experience. Our belief systems, our views shape the world we experience, shape the world we perceive. And yet the perception and the experience is flux. You know, there's nothing sort of fixed. So this is what the Buddha is saying when he talks about moving from wrong view to right view. Yeah, he's saying that, okay, so great, you've discovered that you hold wrong views. Congratulations, perfect. Now let's try if we can see the world more in terms, which is more in line with reality. And one way of doing that is by seeing things as flux, yeah? By looking, for example, into impermanence. Yes, impermanence is kind of key here. So So, and this is just a method. This isn't a kind of, it's not that we can say, well, as a Buddhist, I believe in impermanence. It's not something we pray to, impermanence. Yeah, it's not some sort of God, but he's saying, okay, to get closer to what reality really is like, try to see things as impermanence. Yeah, this is what we also can do, for example, in the mindfulness of breathing. We can see the breath coming and going. We can sometimes, when you practice body awareness, when you do a body scan, you can really feel into your experience, into your perception, into that direct experience, that direct feeling of your experience, and you can start to see that your experience is not static at all. It sort of comes in waves, it sort of flickers almost, yeah? Even your experience right now of, I don't know, sitting with your bum on the ground, you can kind of feel it's not static. Sometimes you feel it more, sometimes less. It comes and goes. There's a sort of process nature of it, yeah? There's that is part of that impermanence. It's not always the same. It will come, it'll go. Nothing is sort of eternally there. Nothing sort of exists just within itself, in and out of itself. And so the Buddha is saying, so when you start doing that, you are moving towards right view. And right view, like exploring impermanence in Buddhism, isn't something that is ultimately true either. It's just a method. Yeah, it's just a little tool that we can use. It's just a tool. The whole of Buddhism is a tool, yeah? The whole of Buddhism, no Buddhist teacher has ever sort of told us anything that we can take as ultimate truth, yeah? None of Buddhism is sort of ultimate reality and truth. Ultimate reality and truth lies behind Buddhism, yeah? We can't put it into words. We can't put the direct experience and the direct seeing of enlightenment, of reality into words. So words, the Buddhist teachings are just sort of trying to hook us into actually getting there, yeah? There's much more to be said about that. I won't do that now. But this is what Sangharakshita means here. He's saying, so it can't be grasped. We can't pin it down and say, okay, I got it. Reality is impermanent. That's not true. That isn't reality. That's just a way of getting us to reality. Do you see what I mean? When we start to focus on things shifting and coming and going, when we can adopt this sort of mindset, that thing is process, yeah, that we are processes. We can start to, we then have a mind which is closer to reality. And if we embrace that more, we don't need that view of impermanence anymore. We can chuck it out. Yeah? So the Buddha doesn't believe in impermanence. The Buddha doesn't think of impermanence at all, because he directly experiences reality from moment to moment, I think. Well, that's what I've been taught. Not making any claims. But you see what I mean? It's like, so this is why we then move to no view, that we can't actually have anything, that we can't hold to anything, because as an enlightened being, the Buddha experiences everything and knows reality already. So he doesn't need to hold on to any kind of teaching or any kind of concept. That's why he can leave behind the teachings and the concepts. So this is why we sometimes say Buddhas have no view. That doesn't mean that they're sort of brain dead or something. It means that they just see things as they really are, as we say. Yeah, they know impermanence. They have fully sort of embraced it and digested it, so that there's no need for them to believe in it or sort of see it or hold on to that sort of concept. So that's what we're trying to do as Buddhists. We're trying to see what is our view, what views do we have, what's sort of at the rock bottom of our being, what are the views and the conditionings that shape our whole being, that sort of bring us into existence. Try then to move them more into right view, and then once we fully made that discovery, once we fully uncovered what's behind all that, we can just let go of it. Yeah, we can just let go of those teachings. Aha, okay. So this is why he's then saying, at the root of things, there's an unfathomable mystery. So this is all we can say. We could almost say that as Buddhists, if you're, I don't know, if you are a Buddhist and if you are being asked, what do you believe in? You can just say, well, I believe that life's a mystery. That would be much more true than to say, well, I believe that there's enlightenment, and it would be much more closer to the truth to say, I believe that at the root of things there's an unfathomable mystery. Yeah, that's what you can say. That would be closer to truth almost. This is usually why people decide to take up Buddhism, because they just think, well, life is a bit weird. Why are we here? Surely there must be some sort of reason for it, but I can't see it. And I want to get to the bottom of that. I want to get to the root of things. I want to get to the root of myself. Why am I here? You know, that's one of those big philosophical questions. And the more we practice, the more we can get to that rock bottom of what brought us into existence, which isn't a creator God, according to Buddhism, but it's actually our own views and our own conditionings. In some ways, in some teachings, Buddhism says that actually the creation of all, what's sort of metaphorically at the root of everything, is ignorance. Yeah. So according to Buddhism, wrong views is what creates world. It's not a sort of holy creator God. Don't say that. If you are being asked what you believe in, I believe that everything's ignorance, but it's not very sexy. But do you see what I mean? It's like it's our sort of entrenched conditionings. Those are what create the world around us. Those are the creative forces. So it's consciousness which creates in Buddhism. And that is that unfathomable mystery, German here, is that we can't quite, it's more that there is a sort of pattern of consciousness which sort of determines the world. Yeah, there's a sort of fabric of consciousness which sort of lies behind it. It's not to be put into one being or one sort of entity or anything. So sometimes we talk about things like the transcendental or the absolute or enlightenment or nirvana or something, and that's already kind of trying to pin them down a bit too much. Actually, at the bottom of it is just fabric of universal forces or whatever. Yeah, just layers of sort of consciousness which sort of interact with each other, you could say, which are sort of patterned or governed by certain laws which go beyond our current understanding. So this is why he's saying, at the root of things there is an unfathomable at the root of things there's an unfathomable mystery. Perhaps I believe this, he says. Perhaps I believe this. At any rate, I know that any attempt to know or cognize this mystery is to play with concepts, ideas, etc., a game of chess whose conclusion is inevitably and always stalemate. Yeah. So if you're trying to sort of make sense out of all of this, good luck, because you're not going to get anywhere. There's a whole tradition of Buddhism which tries to say exactly that, which tries to say that everything you're trying to do with your conscious mind, with your sort of logical mind, is just going to make it worse. It's just going to make the matter worse. Yeah. So there's a whole kind of strand of tradition in Buddhism, which sort of its peak is Zen Buddhism. Sort of peak of that Buddhist tradition, you know, sort of peaks then in Zen Buddhism, which tries to use your logical mind. It tries to bring your logical mind to its very end. Yes, in Zen Buddhism, you, for example, you know, you meditate on those koans, on those paradoxes, and it really tries to break those logical solutions, because it believes that once we get to the end of logical thinking, this is where reality truly can shine through. It's not where reality lies. We're not supposed to be sort of silly and dumb and not use our mind at all. It's just that once we go to the end of logical thinking, and we do need to use logic, but we need to go to its very end, and then beyond that, reality can start to shine through. And then he says, but again, perhaps I believe I shall arise like a phoenix from its ashes when it has destroyed itself. Who knows? This mystery is abiding. So when it has destroyed itself, it, the discriminating mind. So discriminating mind here means, the mind that tries to understand things, that tries to put things into boxes, and that tries to say, okay, I am Dharmasara, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and you are you, and this is what you believe in. And so it's trying to put things, to separate things out. That's the discriminating mind. And in Buddhism, not in the beginning, but at a certain point of the path, that needs to die. Try to use it in the beginning. It's lovely to use logic and understanding. But eventually that needs to die. Eventually that needs to come to its end. And then something else can arise. Or maybe just to finish it off, a bit more about that whole aspect of what needs to die and what the discriminating mind is doing. So sometimes in Buddhism we hear about, that we do not have a self. Yeah, sometimes we hear about this concept of, Buddhists believe that there's no self. Well, actually all Buddhists I know definitely believe that they have a self. So that statement isn't true. Maybe not up here, maybe they will say that there's no self, but you can definitely see their selfing a lot. So that can't quite be true either. And it's very interesting because there's a talk called What Meditation Really Is by the same teacher, by our teacher Sangharakshita, and he says at some point that that one of the aims of meditation practice, especially the mindfulness of breathing, is to actually create a self. He says it's not that we do not have a self, it's more that or when we're trying to let that sort of self die, it's not like we actually have a self to begin with. He says one of the problems with us is that our mind is so divided into different aspects of ourselves, so sort of divided into different motivations, energies, identities even. It's sort of, the first time I heard that, I couldn't quite understand what that meant, but just imagine being in different friend circles. You will end up being a different person, usually. I used to find that quite painful. I had my friend circle with whom I would only do jokes, only a certain kind of joke. Then I had my friend circle with whom I would only talk about music. But there was no connection with me. For some reason, I couldn't be the same person with those same friend circles. I'm a different person with my partner, I'm a different person with my colleagues. And if I tried to be the same person, that would have